Hello, Internet occupants of adequate intelligence and civility, however disheartening a minority you may be. My name is Levi Williams, and this here is my attempt to leave a mark on your midst. I, for a good while, have been into web critics something deep, and being fond as I am of sharing my own views, well, why wouldn't I be? You'll see. I've decided that I want in on the action, to which end I've gone through a painstaking process of launching one of my very own, and so we all find ourselves here now. This is my claim to fame on the internet. This is Contentious Critiques. Now, of course, every web critic series has a motif of sorts. I cover bad movies, I cover 80s video games, I cover superhero comic books, etc. So, what is the motif of Contentious Critiques? Well, in general, I cover any art piece, mostly movies and video games, but whatever works, on which I have an unusual stance. This show is all about opinions that would get me raised eyebrows. This can take the form of something popular that I dislike, something unpopular that I like, or really just any art piece on which I have points to make that, from what I can tell, not a lot of people seem to be making, or otherwise that a lot of people would rather not hear. Ought to be fun. And so, premise established, let's take off. Our first subject is a particularly high-aiming, high-octane, and high-grossing movie. Let's hit the ground running, why don't we? This movie is Avatar, a movie that, according to Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, is appreciated by most, but one that has drawn criticism for its choice of nesting baskets. One whose attempts at pushing boundaries were thought by many to have been focused in a questionable direction. One that, however it may have succeeded at what it was going for, should, to ask many, have reined it in a bit and kept its head on straight. And for those of you interested enough to listen, here's my take on that discussion. In 2017. This show has taken me a long time to put together. Okay, so one of the major complaints about Avatar from the film buff field is, of course, that it sacrifices story for imagery. The story's a tired cliche, the characters are flat and generic, etc. Now, for my money, yeah, the story's not all that much to write home about. Yeah, the characters don't seem to have had much thought put into them. Yeah, the major appeal of the movie is the imagery. Avatar put a lot of energy that could have been used to tell an interesting story with interesting figures into creating what is effectively a 2.5-hour long painting. But here's my question on that matter. What is wrong with that? Yes, I accept that Avatar is attractive primarily for its imagery, but why is that a problem? Why do story and characters have to be a make or break factor? What's wrong with a movie just looking good? I know that I'm far from the only person to say this, but I feel like there's not a whole lot of actual discussion or evaluation on the matter. I just want to turn off my brain. Well, okay, let's actually think about and possibly justify that. And I'm using Avatar as a jumping off point and reference here, but this is more about movies in general. Consider other artistic mediums. Look at painting and sculpture. Look at music. Look at video games. All of these can be good without emphasis on characters and stories, and in many cases no characters and story at all. They sell themselves on visceral gratification, so why can't movies? If you've ever disliked a movie because it cared more about set pieces and flair than story, then think about your favorite music. Classical orchestral music often doesn't even have lyrics, much less engaging stories with engaging characters. You listen to music for what it does to your gut. Do you look at paintings and complain because you know nothing about the people and places in them? What's her role in her environment? What are his likes and dislikes? No, you don't. It's a painting. Shut up. And while video games can tell stories, and are by many expected to, let's be serious here, that's not what we're there for. So, why do so many people demand that every movie put so much stock into story? Check out this scene with two people riding flying creatures. What would a painting of this scene provide that this cinematic version couldn't? In both cases, you're just looking at something pretty. Hell, the cinematic version moves, has multiple shots, and has music. Now, of course, novels do need good writing, but novels are nothing but writing. They have no production value. They have no capacity for sensationalism. Now, if I may flaunt my majestic intellect here, movies are not novels. To my mind, the really cool thing about movies is that they have greater capacity than just about any other form of art to go either way. A movie sequence can be just people talking and build a hook out of good dialogue and situational intensity, and another movie sequence can just be spectacular physical events, and in both cases you feel like you're watching a movie. But an entire movie can be almost nothing but dialogue and situation. So why can't another movie be almost nothing but sensationalism? Again, other mediums can. Why are movies the only sensationalist art pieces that require story elements? Well, actually, I do have a theory. The difference between a movie and a painting or a song is that a movie goes on for 2 hours. It doesn't matter how impressive it looks. Nobody can stay engaged, sitting still, being quiet, and watching something go through the same damn motions for that long. And frankly, yeah, story is a good way to change up the motions. Why something is happening, what will happen as a result, it's a good way to keep the audience in their seats. Now, for comparison, a painting doesn't have to last more than a minute, but a painting gallery may go on for something hefty of a while. But the audience of a painting exhibit can look at the paintings for however long and in whatever order they want and talk amongst each other. A video game goes on for a very long time, but video games by their nature have a very strong basis of audience engagement. So yeah, at this point we might figure that audience proactivity is a factor here. Something has to be moving, something has to be changing its state, but the audience itself can do the work. But that's not exactly a strong suit of movies, is it? The audience just sits there while the exhibit does its thing. Again, there's that exemplar for the ages that is my brain. And this is to say nothing of the fact that movies are often watched in theaters, where you can't even talk to your buddies, or pause or rewind. Now, in this respect, a movie is comparable to a live classical music concert. You sit there for a long time and just observe. So what is the difference between these two? Well, I don't really know, but I do think it worth noting that a music concert consists of many smaller pieces, each of which has a partial identity of its own. So maybe variety also helps. I mean, stagnation is what we're trying to avoid here, and variety is the cliché treatment for it. So the question at this point is, could a movie pull that off? Well, Fantasia more or less does, but Fantasia is a series of unrelated shorts, not to mention largely founded on the music, taking focus away from the cinema. Avatar, on the other hand, spends its entire run in the same setting with the same entities, so does it have enough variety in what it does with them to justify not having a story? Well, it has a nocturnally bioluminescent jungle, it has people climbing floating mountains, it has people riding flying steeds across said floating mountains, it has giant dangerous animal encounters, and it ends in a big-ass battle in the sky between machines and animals. But is it all enough to compensate for no story elements? Well, honestly, I'd say probably not. It's still all the same setting and style, so even if it was just a bunch of set pieces, each of those would probably have to have its own mini-arc. Your mileage will vary, of course, but by and large, if you're sitting still and passively watching something and it's in the same state hours in as it was at the start, then yeah, it will stagnate no matter how spectacular it is. So, you know what, yeah, a movie needs things happening. It needs context and progression. A movie needs a story, fair enough. But there you go. It needs a story. It needs things happening. It doesn't need to be about the story. Not every movie needs the story to be front and center, to be the whole reason that the movie exists. The purpose of the story of a sensationalist movie is to give the bombast a sense of progression and keep it from getting old. And really all that it needs to do that is some conflict and characterization. You need investment, sure, but if there's reasonably heavy difference between the possible outcomes of what's happening, then there you go. You need to get into who's doing and accomplishing what. Well, really doesn't take that much characterization to provide that. And frankly, I think that Avatar succeeds on that front. Avatar has things happening. It has people with personality traits. It has them doing and accomplishing stuff. And it has a high-scale conflict. Yeah, it's all kind of insipid, but it provides reasons for these people to explore a bioluminescent jungle and dogfight with airships and pterodactyl-resemblant aliens. Is that not enough? Do you seriously need to relate to a deep and complex character to appreciate a thrill ride? If so, then fine, but that's you. That's your personal taste. Not every movie should have to adhere to it. And if I might just ask, why does an event have to be complex for you to care about its outcome and results? Oh, I can't get invested. The characters are underdeveloped. The setting is simplistic. Really? They're trying to rescue innocent people from being forcibly relocated and killed over a financial investment. Why do you need political details and stories from their childhoods to care whether they succeed? Oh, well, I guess some people just want to look at pretty colors and shiny objects. Well, you know what? You have fun with that. I'm going to go think and care about what things mean. You know, be smart. Yeah, great. Round of applause for Dr. Reggie Cobbleton von Smartass over here, but let me go ahead and fill you in on something. It is, actually, well and comfortably within the capabilities of the able-minded human to like things for a reason and like other things for a different reason. Holy fuck! Did you know that you can have more than one taste? Did it ever cross that gleaming, elegant mind of yours that a person who reads Mark Twain might also enjoy the smell of dish soap? That you can actually like Sudoku and water slides? Oh, and wouldn't you know it if it bit you on the ass? You don't have to be stupid to like things that can be liked by stupid people. It's almost as if the ability to appreciate superficial beauty and audiovisual flair is entirely separate from the ability to appreciate complex event dynamics and clever use of language. Like they're completely different standards, different spectrums. Oh my god! Isn't it amazing the kind of philosophical breakthroughs we can reach with a little common sense? You know what I can't help but wonder? How many people who hate Avatar because of its emphasis on sensationalism love story-deficient action movies? I don't know the answer to that one, but it crosses my mind. I do, however, know a guy who does hate Avatar because of its emphasis on sensationalism, and has said that the only part of the movie that he likes is the battle scene at the end. So, yeah, that's vindicating. Now, it could be pointed out that while many movies don't warrant action scenes, and would be worse off for them, by far most movies would do nothing but benefit from better writing. But at this point, that's just saying it could be better. You need more than that. Now, if something has a concretely identifiable flaw, something that you can actually pinpoint and quantify, or if it would be improved to a great extent through an easily implemented adjustment that should have been hard to overlook, then yes, that is something to get vocal about regardless of overall quality. Below average writing falls under neither of these two clauses. It's too vague a problem and too difficult to solve to be held against something whose writing is already adequate for its purpose. So, there. Avatar doesn't have to think big, have anything to say, or have any intellectual ambition. Oh, but here's the thing. Avatar does have intellectual ambition. It does think big and say stuff, and well, as it happens, this movie actually has two issues that I wanted to address, so pardon me for the whiplash here, but we're changing the subject. And I certainly hope you've appreciated discovering the good in what you thought was the enemy, because that particular journey goes both ways. Avatar has a big environmentalism thing going on. Now, I am not much of an environmentalist. I'm certainly not the life is precious kind of environmentalist. I used to be, but I grew up, but this is not about environmentalism or environmentalist movies. This actually is about Avatar specifically, because while having a stupid, childish worldview is plentifully damning in and of itself, Avatar takes it a step further. It thinks that it can get into why the wilderness is valuable and life is sacred. Oh, Avatar, that's just precious. You're gonna try to make me think. Okay, Avatar, let's have us a sit down and get some of that pesky light out of those adorable little eyes. To start, some premise and lore details. The setting is an alien jungle on a moon called Pandora, inhabited by a species called the Na'vi. And much of the story revolves around a human remotely piloting a vat-grown Na'vi body, immersing himself into Na'vi culture. As he does so, he learns of the value of nature by getting into their ways of coexisting with their ecosystem, and under that rock, my disciples, is where we will find the problem here. Let's take a look at how the Na'vi associate with their environment. One of the major and most iconic features of Avatar's lore is the ability of these Na'vi to form physical links between their own nervous systems and those of wild animals. They can actually share their minds and senses with beasts. Also, at a late point in the movie, it's revealed that the plants of Pandora seem to form a giant superorganism-esque electrochemical network that allows them to share information with each other. Now, this system is clearly an attempt to symbolize the perspective that life is connected, and at that, a pretty laughable one, because funny thing, Earth doesn't have it. If you're trying to demonstrate the necessity of wilderness preservation, you have failed miserably. Your key most supporting detail is something that does not exist. I mean, call it symbolic all you want, but do you want me to agree with you or not? Because if you're talking to a non-environmentalist, what's being said is, I don't think it important to preserve the wilderness. Oh yeah, well I made up an alien ecosystem in which it would be. And that's barely half the matter. The movie portrays these Na'vi as wise and enlightened because they're one with nature and in tune with the ways of living in nature and all the natural nature of nature's naturalness and nature. It's so fucking pretty. Whereas the humans are a bunch of greedy, violent, hooting dickbags, presumably because they don't nature. Oh, why can't we live in peace and harmony with all the noble beasts of Mother Nature's green kingdom? Why do we kill and oppress everything? Why do we coat everything we touch with oil and steel? Why can't we all just get along like these people? Why can't we be like them? Why can't we be like them? Why can't we just be like them? Why am I an abomination? Why? Well, since you asked, interesting thing about these Na'vi, look at this giant tree that marks their land. Yeah, they live in it. The Na'vi live in trees. They walk along their branches. They can effortlessly climb them at a moment's notice. Now, I'm no zoologist or whatever the hell it would be, but from what I understand, mammals that live in trees typically do so to avoid predators. Monkeys, squirrels, and gibbons come to mind, and Na'vi are certainly comparable to them in regards to arboreal locomotion. Whippy athleticism, free running along branches, etc. I feel it's safe to assume that Na'vi live in trees so that things that would kill them can't reach them. Now consider humans in this respect. How do we avoid contact with things that would get a kick out of killing us? Well, unlike Na'vi, we can't climb trees, so what's left over? Can't fly, can't dig tunnels, can't use camouflage, can't use a chemical defense, can't even run fast. Oh, wouldn't you know it, we can't do shit! Humans have no natural means of avoiding contact with our predators. We do so by building shelter. And sorry, but that kind of entails killing trees. And that's to say nothing of contact that does occur. Up to a hell of an advanced point, building shelter is not going to be foolproof. There will be encounters with hostile animals here and there, and how are we supposed to survive them? What is a human supposed to do while being gnawed at by a pack of wolves? Reason with them? Oh, talk to them about the beauty of life and how they should let other... No, we fight back! We kill things that make our lives harder because we cannot climb a tree and blow raspberries. And further on that note, we also cannot single-handedly win a fight with a bunch of quick-footed, yappy little fuckheads with flesh-rending teeth by whacking them with a stick. You know, like a Na'vi can. We are significantly less of a physical threat to our predators than Na'vi are to theirs. A human could not survive an equivalent to this encounter with a bow. It would need an industrial weapon. Now, let me reiterate, this is not about environmentalism. This is about calling out a bad argument. This movie made up an alien species, gave that species extra biological incentives to preserve the wilderness while relieving them of the weaknesses that incentivize us to demolish the wilderness, and then chastised us for not preserving the wilderness as much as they do. Even if it's true that wilderness preservation is important, this does not go to show it. We cannot peacefully associate with animals by plugging into them. We cannot live in trees. We don't have a naturally occurring internet. Oh, but it gets way better. This moon's neural networking system is... get a load of this, believed to preserve the memories and possibly the consciousness of the dead. This movie, whose message is, why don't you save the trees? These people coexist with the trees, why don't you monsters, portrays the trees of this environmentalist utopia as facilitators of life after death. And you're using these people as a model for how we should associate with our environment? This is like arguing for pro-lifism by making up a species whose embryos have fully developed personalities. Or like arguing for heterosexism by making up a species whose homosexuals rape and murder families. You're not making a case for your perspective, you're just illustrating it. Anybody who doesn't already believe going into it that life is connected, or that the unborn are people, or that homosexuality is harmful to the family, is just gonna say, okay, cute, that's not how it works. Now, I will say this kind of thing can work if the goal behind it is not to convince people, but rather merely to keep the people who already agree thinking about it. Maybe you're just trying to reinforce it as a priority, and that's fine. Sometimes people need an extra kick. So I can see how Avatar would do something for you if you are an environmentalist. But having said that much, I will also say this. As far as making a case does go, this movie actually makes environmentalism look bad as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, the supporting details don't apply to reality, and because of this, all that I see between Earth and Pandora is contrast. A non-environmentalist may see this and figure that what makes environmentalism work on Pandora just goes to show why it doesn't work on Earth, and think, wow, they had to fall back on fantasy to feel like they had a point. I am totally right. So, yeah, there you go. Avatar has great visuals, and a movie can make a core identity out of visuals, and Avatar didn't need to say anything, but it did, and it made an ass of itself. I would have preferred that it just spent its runtime looking good and using context and progression as framework. Avatar, be a sightseeing tour. You're a really good sightseeing tour, and that's absolutely something to be proud of and call your own, but I'm sorry, you're a moron. You have no business trying to make statements and provoke thought. You are not a professor. You are a performer. You have a great skill, Avatar, and you use it magnificently, but when you try to showcase something that you can't do, it's just embarrassing for everybody involved. And there, ladies and gentlemen, you have my glorious entrance, and may word of the bringing be spread. If you like this video, share it with your friends and like-minded peers, and see it known that I will be back. In the meantime, I guess all I really have left to say is, this is Contentious Critiques, and you're welcome.